Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 317. Today we are talking all about one of my favorite topics, project-based learning. I can't wait to dive into this topic with you, but first I want to give a special shout out and thank you to CTC Math for continuing to sponsor this podcast. They are a great resource and can meet your kids where they are in their math and move them forward all the way from kindergarten level to calculus. Check them out at ctcmath.com or head over to the show notes for this episode where you can click on the link for a special offer just for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners. You'll hear a little bit more about what I love about CTC Math later on in this episode, but for now, pop those earbuds in and let's get on with the show. Hey there, welcome back. Today we are talking all about one of my favorite topics ever, project-based learning, but not the project-based learning that looks like Pinterest perfect pictures and color-coded binders or a tri-fold poster for every child out there. No, we're talking about the project-based learning that is really good for neurodivergent kids and why it is good for those asynchronous thinkers. We're talking about project-based learning that is great for kids who are brilliant in one area and maybe struggling in another, or deeply passionate about a topic but inconsistent, or creative but overwhelmed by their own creativity and all of the ideas floating around inside of their brains. Or capable but unable to sustain the output that a traditional project might expect of them. Or even incredibly knowledgeable while still struggling with things like executive function skills. The kids that can explain black holes for 40 minutes but can't remember where they put their shoes the last time they took them off. The kids who hyperfocus, burn out, abandon projects too quickly or halfway through. Or the kids who create amazing things in ways that don't actually look really academic. Today we're going to be talking about how to create sustainable projects for those kinds of kiddos, how to manage the scope of the project, how long it lasts, what it entails, what each of the steps are, and how to build realistic timelines with our kids, especially those kids that have kind of quirky profiles or they're very asynchronous in their abilities and their thinking. We're also going to talk a little bit about how to document their learning without turning your home into a full-time assessment center or having your kids take tests or build huge products out of everything that they make. Because project-based learning can be incredible for neurodivergent learners, but only if we build it out in a way that actually fits their nervous systems and their executive function profiles. So let's dive in. But first, when we talk about our quirky personalities or our asynchronous learners, we're talking about kids whose abilities are uneven. They are very uneven. They're kids who may read at a college level but struggle with handwriting, design elaborate worlds but forget basic routines, understand advanced science concepts but melt down over transitions. They might speak like tiny professors but struggle with task completion. This is incredibly common in gifted kids, in twice exceptional kids, in autistic kids, in kids who have ADHD, and many other types of neurodivergent learners. And honestly, traditional school models struggle with the asynchrony because they assume that development is even. And we know as parents who are homeschooling neurodivergent kids that their development is anything but even. Project-based learning often works beautifully with these kids because it allows depth, it allows breadth, it allows flexibility, it allows creativity, it allows a non-linear approach and growth. But here's the catch. Neurodivergent kids can overthink. They can overanalyze, they can hyperfocus, they can avoid completion, or they can become overwhelmed with their own ideas. And so we need structure, but not rigid structure. We need supportive structure that allows us to step in and guide our kids while scaffolding and helping them through the organization of the project as a whole so that they have a clear-cut outcome in mind as they go for it. Project-based learning works especially well for neurodivergent kids because it naturally includes meaning, autonomy, novelty, emotional connection. It taps into their interests, and it often includes real-world relevance. And all of those things increase engagement. Projects also allow kids to show competence, follow their curiosity, build confidence, and integrate multiple skills together. Instead of now we're going to do writing, the project says we're building something meaningful and writing helps us do it. That shift in thinking and framing matters. Projects can also reduce perfectionism. They can reduce the friction that comes along with task initiation because our kids are more naturally bought into it. And it can also eliminate resistance. The work feels purposeful, and often our neurodivergent kids just want something to do that feels like it has a greater impact on their everyday life. One of the biggest struggles that parents and teachers of neurodivergent kids have, especially when they're gifted and twice exceptional, is that age-old question, why do I even need to learn this? They want to know what the purpose is or what the greater meaning is beyond the binder or the project they're creating. And when we focus the learning around a project and base it on that, it gives them real-world applicability and meaning. They struggle, though, and frankly, we struggle as parents when we make the projects too big or we're a little too vague in the outcomes we're hoping for or what we want our kids to accomplish. And they can be even too vague. They don't know where they're going with it if they're driving the organization. We as parents can often make the projects a little bit too long, too all-encompassing, or too parent-intensive. I've fallen into that trap numerous times in the years and years that I've homeschooled, where I've come up with an idea for the kids to do, and midway through it, I'm like, what was I thinking? This is so much work. It's not even worth it for them. They're not getting enough learning out of it for the amount of time and effort I'm putting in, let alone the time and effort they're putting in. So let's talk about how to avoid those pitfalls. The biggest mistake I think that families can make when they're focusing on a project-based approach and tapping into their kids' interests is that parents don't have any kind of scope boundaries. And sometimes our neurodivergent kids can just become idea machines without the execution piece. I know I'm guilty of that. I am an adult who was identified as gifted when I was younger and have other twice exceptionalities or other exceptionalities. I have anxiety, I have ADHD, I struggle with executive function, typically follow through. I am an idea generator. I come up with all sorts of great ideas, and midway through the execution, I often lose interest, primarily because as I've come to understand my brain, the novelty has worn off. And even though I'm really passionate about the project, the getting to the end of it starts to feel like drudgery and like a job to me. And I prefer things that have immediate meaning and make an impact. And so as soon as I start to get too removed from that impact, it makes it difficult to keep going. It's one of the reasons I love public speaking so much and getting out there to conferences and conventions. I get a chance to speak one-on-one or many-on-one with parents and groups of parents as well as their kids oftentimes, if they've brought their kids to conferences or conventions, and it rejuvenates me. It reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing and gets me in touch with the very people I'm looking to serve. And so it gets me excited again about the projects that I'm working on. I love serving families of neurodivergent kids, especially those who are homeschooling and trying to find a better way to educate their kids, because I'm absolutely passionate about helping those kids meet their own potential and become the best versions of themselves. And I'm equally passionate about the impact an engaged parent and a connected family can have on those neurodivergent children's lives. And so there's nothing more exciting and motivating for me than meeting the people that I'm serving so that I can get excited about reaching more people and serving more people. Our gifted kids are just like that. They're just like me. They want a connection and they need support to get off the generate idea train and get to some of those follow throughs. So we need to help them see the meaning. They often can think bigger, deeper, more creatively, and more expansively than expected, which is wonderful until the project then becomes impossible, or the child gets overwhelmed, or their executive function skills collapse in the weight of all of the things that they want to do, and then everyone starts to feel discouraged. This is where creating a scope and boundaries around the scope matters. It also is where we need to really identify what the meaning is and potentially what the blocks are. We recently had a situation here, actually it was very recent, just within the last day or so, in our home where my youngest he's been working on organizing his room and creating distinct areas within his room for Lego building and stop motion, a reading nook, and just different places to display his things. And so he was brainstorming the additional pieces of inexpensive furniture or organization he'd like me to purchase. And I said, I'm absolutely willing to do all the things that you need me to do to support you in your ideas for organization. But I just deep cleaned that space and organized that space from top to bottom. And you've let it go badly again. There are toys and Legos and dirty laundry scattered all over. You can't even get to your floor to vacuum it, let alone find space to bring in new furniture. So we'll talk once you get that done. Now, that project has been in the works for about 3 weeks. And we were talking again today, and I said, I can't do anything else for you. I can't give you any more privileges. If I'm going to be going, if you want to go to the bowling alley, or you want to go to the pool, or you want to go to the park, I can't take you there until you followed through on the job that you promised to do 3 weeks ago now. And so with his help, I wrote a list of the things that he needed to do, and he went upstairs to do it. And he came back down about 15 minutes later and he said, I think that I know what my problem is. We had taken apart the doors. There were bifold, like accordion style doors on the closet up there, and they kept getting stuck on the bottom on the carpet. And so the doors wouldn't open well, they wouldn't close well. And so the closet just became like a catch-all for junk, and it would get forgotten about. So we took the doors off, organized everything, but the doors had stayed up there and they were just in the way. And he said, if you could take the doors out, I think that I could get it done. And so I did. I took the doors out and I just put them in the hallway down the next flight of stairs so somebody else could take care of it from there. But I fought him down the stairs and took him out, and that was the block that was keeping him from doing it, because it was diagonal across his floor and it felt overwhelming. So I took that out, and within an hour and a half, he had the job done that he'd been working on for 4 weeks. So sometimes it's just really identifying what the holdup is and really identifying what the boundaries are of what needs to be done before whatever else needs to happen. So let's talk about that. Scope. Scope equals what means done. So for this example, done meant the surfaces of the dressers and the bookshelves were cleaned off and dusted and organized so they weren't super cluttered and we could find whatever we needed. All of the Legos that were scattered all over the floor were put away in the bins. And then the area he had designated for stop motion was cleaned up of the broken past projects and ready for a new one. And then the stuffed animals were put in the place that they belong, the bed was made, the floor was vacuumed, and then the vacuum was put away. So we had a scope, what meant done. Many neurodivergent kids need visible finish lines. They need to know what done looks like. My husband's been asking that same kid to pick up sticks around the yard for a long time. And he said, I'll pay you for it. Just get it done and then I'll give you some money for it. And he kept not getting it done, even when he'd play outside. So my husband finally asked him, why won't you get it done? And he said, I don't know what you're going to pay me, so I don't know if it's actually worth my time, which I thought was a pretty introspective thing to say. And it was a valid thing to say. It was a very open-ended ask that was a big job. We live with 3.5 acres of woods on our property, and so there are a lot of sticks down. And so this big open-ended project with no actual visible finish line and no visible intangible reward was overwhelming. So once my husband identified how much he'd be willing to pay, what entailed done, and what entailed the payout, what earned the payout, he agreed. And so he's going to start doing that again tomorrow. So creating a visible finish line, also breaking things down into smaller chunks so it continues to stay novel and there are small things to look forward to along the way, as well as realistic expectations. It's very unrealistic to ask a just barely 13-year-old to get all of the sticks in the whole backyard. But it is realistic to ask him to spend an hour picking up sticks while he's outside playing. If we don't make the finish line visible, break things into smaller chunks, and include realistic expectations, projects become infinite, emotionally heavy, and impossible to complete. Completion matters, not because unfinished projects are failures, but because finishing builds confidence. That kiddo who finished his room has heard from just about everybody in the house. He's invited everybody upstairs. His siblings have praised him. I've praised him. My husband's praised him. And so he is feeling more confident and he's ready to tackle the next job. How do we do that then? Like, how do we, yes, visible finish lines, yes, smaller chunks, yes, realistic expectations, but how do we set a realistic scope? How do we know what's realistic for our specific kid at that specific time with that specific project? Here's a framework that we can use when we're thinking about this. Step 1, start with a small version. So if your kiddo says, I want to build a civilization in Minecraft, don't say no or that's too big. Say, what is the smallest version of that we could finish successfully that we could then build on? So maybe it's create one biome or one district or one building or a creature. I don't know. Do you create creatures in Minecraft? I'm not super familiar with all the different games. I know basics. One scene, one experience, one whatever. Small wins create momentum within our kids. So step 1, start with the small version. And then step 2, define done early on in the process. This helps so much. Ask what will tell us that this project is complete. So for example, 5 labeled pages if we're creating a project that requires writing, or 1 short video, or 1 presentation, or 3 completed builds, or 1 finished prototype. Visible endings reduce overwhelm and give a clear-cut ending. And then step 3 is to plan for energy, not just time. So this can be really huge for neurodivergent kids because, as we know, there are good days and there are bad days. There are days when they're like all in, and there are days when it's very difficult to get past their avoidance. Many kids can hyper-focus intensely and then crash hard afterwards. I'm actually guilty of that. That's one of the byproducts of my own ADHD, is I can get hyper-focused on a project and work and then not do anything for a couple of days following. So we need to make sure that we're managing their energy and helping them learn to manage their energy too. So timelines should include recovery, flexibility, low energy days, and realistic pacing. So it's not just get this done in a week, it's let's work to get to the next step and the next step while building in some of that downtime.
Okay, so let's talk about math. Specifically, let's talk about finding a program that actually works for your unique homeschoolers. In our house, we've been using CTC Math for years, and even though I am so appreciative that they sponsor this podcast, I am a paying customer. I'm still a paying customer even with their sponsorship because it's just that good, and I love supporting great companies with great programs. With 2 kids still at home, both with very different learning needs, CTC Math has been the flexible and dependable solution that I keep coming back to. One of my kiddos needs more time to process math concepts, and I love that she can move through the lessons at her own pace without feeling rushed or behind. My other kiddo, he flies. He jumps straight to the end of unit tests to see what he already knows, and then we only focus on the lessons that fill the gaps. That kind of customization is gold when you're homeschooling gifted or twice exceptional kids. CTC Math gives you the access to every grade level from kindergarten through 12th grade with your subscription so that your child can accelerate, review, or jump around based on their own needs, not based on some rigid curriculum structure. And because it's video-based with clear instruction and auto-graded lessons and quizzes, it frees me up to support my kids without being chained to a textbook, teacher's manual, or whiteboard. So whether your child needs more time or is racing ahead, you can tailor it all with CTC Math. Check it out at ctcmath.com. You will see why so many homeschool families trust it. And if you've got quirky math learners like I do, I think you're going to love it. If you have any questions about CTC, like I said, we've been using it for years in our homeschool, and I encourage you to reach out and ask me any questions that you have. If you do pop over there, let them know that I sent you and let them know that you appreciate their ongoing support of homeschoolers everywhere, especially those of you here at Raising Lifelong Learners. All right, let's get back to today's episode.
Okay, so let's talk about some kinds of timelines or examples of timelines that actually work. So traditional timelines often assume like a linear productivity, a consistent output, and equal energy every single day. Neurodivergent nervous systems rarely work that way. So instead of, let's get this finished by Friday, maybe we can think of or try, let's work on this maybe 3 times this week. Or tiny progress counts. So we made a little bit of progress today. Let's take a break and come back and visit it again tomorrow. Or let's identify the different checkpoints along the way and we'll reassess after each checkpoint. So let's talk about that idea, the checkpoint method. Instead of one huge deadline, you can create tiny checkpoints that you can reevaluate after. For example, maybe the first checkpoint is brainstorming. You're going to spend a week, a couple days, whatever the energy allows for, brainstorming not only the project, but the different aspects of the project that we need to think about, the materials that we'll need, the outcome potentially that will create whatever the project is going to be, if there is somebody we need to present it to, and about how long we think it'll take, depending on what needs to happen when, and if there is a natural built-in deadline. And then the next checkpoint could be just gathering the materials. Gather the materials that we can gather from around the house, make a list of the things that we need to go out and purchase that we don't have at home, and then get them all so everything is ready. And then maybe the next checkpoint is to create a rough draft of the project, a rough draft of the scope and sequence, an outline of the presentation, a sketch of what the slides are going to look like, whatever it is you're going to do. Have some kind of rough draft. And then the next checkpoint is to share the progress that you've made. This prevents overwhelm or perfectionism and for sure shut down because there's just baby steps along the way. And so you can create as many or as few of these checkpoints as you need to. So how do we document learning when we're working on projects? It's not like we have a test that we can turn in if we need to keep things for a portfolio or a full, like sometimes projects are a video game or a presentation or just talking about something over dinner. So what kinds of things can we do to document a project-based approach to learning when we're touching on a lot of different subject areas? This is where a lot of homeschool parents get stuck, especially if you're in a state that requires portfolios or evaluations or specific types of transcripts or some kind of reassurance that learning is happening. And when it's intangible, like sometimes project-based learning can be, it makes it difficult to report it. So depending on what your state requires, you need to think outside the box a little. But here's the good news. You don't necessarily need elaborate binders or daily written summaries or a formal school-looking output. You just need evidence of learning. So some of the things that you might be able to do and use to demonstrate learning are photos. You could take pictures of builds your kids are doing, projects they're creating, experiments they're doing, sketches they've created, prototypes they've made, and you can bind that into a book or put it in a binder under sheet protectors. You could use voice notes. You could ask your kids questions like, tell me about what you made. Keep a voice note of it and then have the voice note transcribed so you could print it out for an evaluator if necessary. You can ask them quick reflection questions. What did you learn? What was hard about this? What surprised you? What would you change next time if you were to do this project again? You could do a video walkthrough. Put your kids on camera and have them explain their process, their design, their reasoning, the revisions that they made. This type of documentation is especially good for our kids who struggle with writing. An important reframe to make in our mind, though, is that documentation should support learning and not interrupt it constantly. So if whatever it is we're having our kids do to show us their learning is actually interrupting the very learning we're asking them to show us, we need to rethink what we're asking them to do. Okay, here's a question that I get a lot when I'm talking to parents about project-based learning. What happens when a project stalls? Or my kid is tired of it and doesn't want to do it anymore, or they just want to give up. Projects stall for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's executive dysfunction. They just don't know what to do next. Sometimes it's perfectionism. It's not turning out the way they pictured it would, and so it's creating avoidance. Sometimes it's over scoping, like maybe when you were scoping out how the project was going to end, you overthought it and made the project too big. Sometimes it's fatigue. They're just tired of it. They want to do something else and they've gotten everything they can get out of the topic as far as they're concerned. Sometimes it's anxiety. This is just getting too big, too overwhelming, and they just need a break. And then sometimes it's unclear next steps. None of this means that the project failed. It just means that we might need to look at the project itself because sometimes projects need pauses. Sometimes they need pivots. Sometimes they need downsizing. Sometimes they need support. So some questions that you can ask yourself if a project stalls is, what's feeling hard? What's the smallest next step we can take? And do we need to shrink the scope down a little bit or change up what we're expecting out of the ending? I've done this before with projects. I've created things and realized it's not really working out and I don't want to continue doing this. And that's okay. We can work through it as long as we think reflectively about what it is we want to change and why we want to change it. Okay, so what is success then when it comes to project-based learning? If the project's going to stall, if we don't know the outcome, if we have to change things up potentially, or if we get done with everything and we reach our goal, what is success? Success in project-based learning is not necessarily perfect completion. It's not a beautiful output or Pinterest-worthy products. It's engagement. Our kids are engaged in the act of learning and they're motivated to do it. It's the persistence that brings them to the table every single day to continue the project. It's curiosity. It's approaching the project with curiosity and interest. It is growth. They have changed, improved, and grown from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. It's also recovery. They're able to bounce back if something's not going right. They see it, they don't see it as a failure. They see it as, okay, I got to rethink that a little bit. And then they come back and they rethink it. And then they do the next thing and the next thing. And I think most importantly, it's confidence. They start to see themselves as a learner and someone whose curiosity is worth learning about and worth following. And that's ultimately what we want. We want our kids to know that they can learn anything, they can find out about anything, and they can build around the things that they're interested in and pretty much find the information to anything that they need. This is especially important for asynchronous kids because their brains are all over the place. Their development is all over the place. So if we can give them the confidence that they can be learners, they can achieve just about anything they put their mind to. Project-based learning can be for neurodivergent homeschoolers because it honors their curiosity. It honors the depth that oftentimes our neurodivergent kids crave. It honors the creativity that they already bring to the table, as well as authentic engagement. Sustainable projects, though, require scope, flexible timelines, and compassionate support. We're not trying to create productivity machines. We're helping our kids build ideas, solve problems, explore deeply, and trust themselves as learners. And honestly, that matters more than a perfect output. All right. I hope that this has inspired you to try some different project-based learning ideas and follow your kids' interests a little bit more. If you're curious about different kinds of ideas, different kinds of things you can do with your kids if you're focusing on a project-based outcome, on the website in our shop, we've got lots and lots of unit study outlines. The unit studies that are on the site are not full-blown unit studies that you take and you open and you go. They are exactly what they're described as, a unit study outline. So you get the download, you purchase a download. They're very inexpensive. They're less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And they have multiple pages with idea sparkers. So directions you can go that fit into different subject areas within the topic. So say you get one that's on wetlands. So your kids are into science. It's got different ideas that you can pursue, your kids can pursue for the science research part, history stuff, projects that they can create, things that they can write, things that they can do, and then how to extend the learning. And then there's also a project organizer page to go with it. So it's a way to get your kids thinking about what they could do and get them started on the doing, but it doesn't do it for them. It gives them guiding questions. It gives them places to go and information to seek out, but the groundwork is laid for them. It's not done for them. We've got, dozens and dozens on the site in all different topics and subjects. So you can check that out at Raising Lifelong Learners. Just click the shop button. And if you're interested in tapping into your kids' interests and learning about them more deeply and having them connect with other kids just like them, I would love to have you in the Learners Lab. We do all sorts of things based on different themes every single month, and families connect through Q&A and group coaching sessions for parents, the forum for parents to get their questions answered about their asynchronous and quirky kids. And kids can participate in live classes, as well as clubs and meetups where they can play games and just chat with one another. I'd love to have you. You can check that out over on the show notes for this episode, where you can also check out the link to CTC Math to find out all about them and thank them for continuing to support the podcast. All right, we'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode. I can't wait to talk to you then. In the meantime, if you know of anybody that could benefit from this podcast, please forward it on to them. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I will talk to you soon. Enjoy your kids. Bye for now.